Given this fact, it's not surprising that those followers of Joseph Smith who were intimately informed about both rituals were not disturbed by superficial similarities. So why are Mormons today disturbed by those superficial similarities? Their idea that the superficial similarities are superficial, however, is what I disagree with. The idea that if the gestures mean something different, the ritual is different, that very well could be. But that does not refute the fact that Joseph Smith got those gestures from his acquaintance with Freemasonry. The 5 points of fellowship are nowhere else in Joseph Smith's day except in Freemasonry. Can anybody refute that statement? The hand grips, the tokens, the penalties, they are very similar, and they serve for the same purpose of keeping it sacred and secret from the world. That's not a superficial similarity. You don't find that theme in Lutheranism, in Baptist materials, in Catholic materials. And it may very well have early Christian materials, that's true. But what could that have been understood in Joseph Smith's day? Freemasonry was all around Joseph Smith. Through the vast anti-Masonic movement from the murder of William Morgan in 1826, for a decade, hundreds of anti-Mason newspapers sprung up in all of the states Joseph Smith was in the very towns he lived in, and William W. Phelps was one of those anti-Masons. And Joseph Smith immediately brought him into the fold and entrusted him with being an author and a publisher and a printer for LDS materials. Because, and this is my assumption, Phelps obviously proved he was a good author by showing Smith his anti-Masonic materials. What other explanation would there be for Joseph Smith putting him in that position? That's where his skill was. Joseph Smith could easily have found all kinds of Masonic materials from an anti-Mason who turned his back against Masonry. No, we don't have an exact historical record of that occurring. But did everything Joseph Smith ever did or say, was that recorded? Of course not. That's never happened with anybody. But the potential, the possibility, the very real possibility is certainly there. Hey, there goes some classic planes. We're getting ready to have the Blue Angels here in a couple of weekends. I'm going to video that for us too. So the similarities are powerful, and they are there in the Mormon endowment. That doesn't mean Joseph Smith didn't receive it by revelation. That means he utilized the part of the information that he knew about in Freemasonry. And I know you're going to say, well, you're assuming he knew. I'll show in my book why I think that's a very powerful possibility. We're just seeking after possibilities. That's all I'm doing. I'm showing that it's not impossible. And Hamblin and Peterson and Minton agree with that. It's not impossible. Even though the meanings possibly changed in the ritual, that doesn't mean he didn't get it from Freemasonry. That means he took it, and instead of using the Freemasonic idea, he incorporated what he was revealed to give using the gestures already available. That's how I would interpret that. That doesn't threaten the Mormon endowment in any manner that I'm aware of. And then they say, and they use Webb's Freemasonic Monitor, they show the differences between Freemasonry and the Mormon endowment. And there certainly are differences. And they elaborate, where in Mormonism will we find the symbolic significance of the royal arch? It'd probably blow their mind if they knew, and I'll get to that in my book, but they ask the question. Where is the Tuscan, Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian architectural styles? Good point. It's not in Mormonism. The 5 senses, well, the 5 points of fellowship involve the 5 senses, so that would be my answer for that one. The 7 liberal arts and sciences, not specifically maybe as 7 liberal arts, but the glory of God is intelligence. learning was definitely one of Joseph Smith's main characteristics. So that's not that big a deal. A sword pointing to a naked heart, the anchor, the 47th problem of Euclid, the hourglass, the scythe, the chisel and mallet, the lodge, the Grand Master, Deputy Grand Master, Junior Warden, Orders of Knighthood, Knights of the Red Cross, Knights Templar, and Knights of Malta. So there are differences, that's true. But these do not refute the fact that there are also parts that Joseph Smith utilized. We Masons recognize that there's differences. We also recognize that there are similarities. Those similarities don't damn Mormonism any more than they damn Freemasonry, however. These guys say some of this material can go back to the early Christian materials. Absolutely, without question. That's part of the power of the Mormon restoration, would be one of my arguments. But this is precisely what the legenda of Freemasonry teaches as well. It goes back into antiquity. Do we have a direct historical line of proof? No. Neither in Mormonism nor in Freemasonry. It's all taken on faith. But the two point back to the same direction and to the same times. And that's my point. The similarities are extremely strong. What few there are. The differences are also extremely strong. I would argue the similarities demonstrate Joseph Smith felt free to use what was available within the context of the revelation he was receiving to give it a new meaning. But he borrowed it from Freemasonry. The differences refute the critics who would argue this proves Joseph Smith simply stole Freemasonry and all Mormonism is a second-rate Freemasonry. Well, that's simply false. I don't buy that in any manner whatsoever. That is how I would understand this tension between the similarities and the differences. Now, in the course of discussing the similarities and the differences of Freemasonry and Mormonism, I mean, it's like when Nibley compared the similarities and differences between Jesus and the people of his day. Yes, there are similarities, and yes, there are differences, and Nibley emphasized that the differences are important as well. But so are the similarities, because he was a common man. I shouldn't say common, I meant he was a man of his day. Jesus was. Joseph Smith was a man of his day too. And, I mean, just like when he did his Joseph Smith translation of the Bible, he didn't do that in a vacuum through strict revelation. No, he used the King James Bible. He had it in front of him. He was using what was available to him. The gold plates on the Book of Mormon. Joseph Smith didn't just receive the Book of Mormon through revelation alone. He had the plates. And, I mean, I know there's some varying interpretations of that as well. The papyri with Joseph Smith and restoring the Book of Abraham. That didn't happen in a vacuum. Materials came to him from his environment, and he utilized those materials. That's simply what I'm saying about Freemasonry. Greg Kearney, another Master Mason, he lives in Australia, he presented a paper a few years ago at the Fair Conference. You can get that on the Fair website. I would highly recommend you read that. It's a sensational discussion. I'm going to read what part of it Jeffrey Bradshaw says in his book, In God's Image and Likeness. This is by Eborn Publishing. It's the absolute most gigantic commentary I've ever found on the Book of Moses. It's absolutely excellent text.